Good evening.
Good evening, Rabbi.
Got to Facebook. Okay, we're doing Chet. So it says in here in the Torah, לא תמלא אישה קדרה מעששיות בתור מוסים. A woman should not fill up a pot with all kinds of legumes. Let's see inside the Torah what it says. תיתן לתוך התנור and put them into the oven. ערב Shabbat, סמוך לחשך. Right. So he's telling you, don't take raw legumes and put it into the oven before Shabbat. So he says, why is that? Because these types of legumes, these are specific types, they need a lot of cooking. So they won't be ready at night, for sure. So it's going to have to be for the morning meal. So therefore, we're concerned that he's going to stir the coals in order to make it cook faster, because this way he'll be able to eat it at night. So these are specific types of legumes that take a long time to cook. Like there are, like we have today, black eyed peas, right? They take a few hours to cook, a couple of hours, whatever it is. Right? The truth is, you can do it faster. But anyway, we're not going to get into that now. The point is, right, that the ones that take a long time, you shouldn't put it in before Shabbat. So what does that mean? Within a half hour before Shabbat. We're afraid he's going to stir the coals. Another thing he says is the baker, right, should not fill up a barrel of water also before the Shabbat. And put it inside the oven. So why? Because maybe it'll cool down, right? Close to Shabbat. So apparently here, I think he's talking about that it's going to cool down like towards the end of Shabbat. And then we're afraid he's going to stir the coals to heat them up, that they should be ready right after Shabbat goes out. If they did so, he says, it's forbidden to drink that. The Motzi Shabbat, ad kadesh yasu. Until Shabbat goes out, right, and it takes time that it takes to do it, to bake, to boil it. Okay, that's what he says, the tour. Okay, let's see Bet Yosef. Says Bet Yosef, בפרק כמה Shabbat, right? First parak of Shabbat, י"ח עמוד ב', תנו רבנן, לא תמלא אישה כדירה עששיות. As we said, right, the woman shouldn't fill up these legumes, תורמוסין, ותניח לתוך התנור, and put them into the oven, ערב שבת, עם חשיכה, right, before it gets dark, ואם נתנה למוציא שבת, אסורים. So it says, but if she did put it, it's going to be forbidden until Shabbat goes out, and the time that it takes to do it. Same thing with the baker, right? To put the barrel of water and put in to put inside the oven, Erev Shabbat. Im chashecha, right? Im asaken, if he did so, the Motzei Shabbat, for the outgoing of Shabbat, Asurim b'kdesh asu, here also is going to be forbidden until it goes out and time it takes to do it. Explains in the Gemara, Tama b'gezerah shemei chateh b'gechalim. So Gemara says, right, what's the reason for all these things? Because we're concerned he's going to stir the coals, right? Same idea. Here's Rashi explains, asasiot v'turmusin tzrichin bishul yoter, right? These legumes need a lot of cooking. What about the water? What's the reason for that? The barrel of water. So he says this comes this which the Tur wrote comes from the Rosh and the Tosfot. But the Rambam says the asasiot v'turmusin maim enam tzrichim bishul arbeh. So Rambam says no, actually these legumes don't need a lot of cooking. The dato alehem, so therefore he wants to eat them at night. Leochlam lealtar, to eat them right away. Mipnei kach afa pi shelo ditbashlu. And therefore, since even if they didn't cook kosher ikar, they didn't cook at all, tafshil shelo bishel kol tzorko. It's like a dish which didn't cook all the way. שאסור להשותו בתנור, you're not allowed to put it in the oven. Mashma the tanur lav dafka. So that implies, right? It's not only an oven. The din lekira, same thing also would apply to the stove. The kopach and the kopach. Ela in can garafu katan, unless he remove the coals, break out the coals. The alpi mashenit bayer b'siman reishnun gimel, and that according to what was explained in the chapter reishnun gimel, chen katav sham Rav Hamagid. Rav Magid also says this. Mikatane stam asurin motzei Shabbat. Since it says right, it's forbidden until Shabbat goes out. Miktesh asur, and the time it takes to do it. Mashma defilu b'shogeg nami. So that implies that even if he did it inadvertently, asur, it's going to be forbidden at motzei Shabbat until Shabbat goes out. Miktesh asur, time it takes to do it. Like we said in this parak, Misharabu Mashim Bemezid. So over there it says, right, that since now, right, there are many people who do it on purpose, it's not inadvertent. And they say, oh yeah, we forgot, you know. Then they made a decree, even on the one who forgot. I already wrote this in chapter 253. Okay, great. So that's the end of the Yosef. Looks like it's the end of the chapter 2. So this is Chet and Tet. Okay, so we're going to go to Shulchan Aruch. This Shulchan Aruch. Lo yimale adam kedera asasiyot, right? As we said, don't put, right, into your pot all types of legumes. So here in the parentheses, he explains, right, what kind of legumes are we talking about? He says these are large ones. I'm sorry, not large ones. These are the ones that grow in Israel, as opposed to the ones that grow in Bavel. The Israeli ones take longer. So the problem is, right, we don't want you to take these legumes and to put them in the oven before Shabbat. What are we talking about before Shabbat? Within a half hour. So he says the reason is because these things do not require much cooking, right? So that means he goes like the Rambam's explanation, not like the way the Torah explained it. So therefore he wants to eat them right away. So it says because of this, even if they weren't cooked at all, they consider it to be like another dish which already started to cook. It didn't go all the way. You're not allowed to put it on the fire. Same thing with the stove and kopach. Okay, great. So the Rama says, so he says, when do we say that this is forbidden? When the stove is not baked out with the coals. But if it is, we said, right, then it's okay. because we're afraid he's going to stir the coals. That's the whole point. If he did so, right, what happens? Even if he would b'shogeg, even if it was inadvertent, it's still forbidden to have that until Motzi Shabbat. Until time takes to make it. Okay, that's about it. So this is not something we do oftentimes nowadays.
It's
So
not, it's not something we do.
right.
But what
So
about like people who make cholent and they put the meat and the beans and they set it up before Shabbat, intending it
yeah.
Saturday? That
So
doesn't count.
here's the thing, right? According to this explanation, the way he explains it here, we're talking about legumes which have a short time period, right, for cooking. So therefore, the problem is, that if you throw it in, and you're going to come to stir the coals. So, who does this, right? Puts legumes into the oven, right, before Shabbat. I mean, this is not very common.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like people put beans in their cholent, yeah? And they set
Yeah,
it
but
aside.
but the cholent also has other things, right? So it takes, the
So
cholent
this
is
is
for the
only if
morning,
you,
right? We're
if
not
you,
eating it at night.
right,
But
but
the
you're
Rabbi
saying that
wants
even
to
if,
have it at night. That's the whole thing, right?
so the intention matters?
Yeah, because since he wants to have it at night, he wants to make it snappy,
Okay, so
and that's why he's going to stir the coals.
if we intend for the beans to be eaten at night, we don't put them in 30 minutes before Shabbat.
Right, but again, right, he's talking here about according to what he says here, talking about these legumes that grow in Israel that cook very fast.
Okay.
Speedy legumes. This is not the ones you buy at Trader Joe's. Right? So don't worry about that. Okay, whatever. Interesting. But if you're making a challenge, just the opposite, right? That's for the morning. So that's got a different dynamic to it. The challenge, as we already said, right? You can put it even on an open flame for our purposes, right? Because it's for the morning. So we're not concerned about anything. Okay. So anyway, that's the end of the chapter. So here we say, right, even if he did it b'shogeg, inadvertent, right, he still has to, not eat it until Shabbat goes out. So what's the reason for that? We said in the Bet Yosef, the reason is because there started to be a lot of people, who are doing it on purpose, right, and lying about it. So the rabbis decree, even if he does it inadvertently, he still has to not eat it until the Shabbat goes out. Okay, fantastic. So that's that. Let's move on. There's one more Shulchan Aruch here. So it says, Yosef, לא ימלא חבית של מים, right? של מים, וייתן לתוך התנור. Another thing is, right, that this is also something we don't do, right? He takes a barrel of water and puts it into the oven, right? Also before Shabbat, right? So here also we're concerned that he's going to stir the coals. If he did so, here also it's going to be forbidden. because we're afraid he's going to stir the coals. So from all these halachot, right? What do you really learn? You learn one simple idea, right? Which is that you should buy a plata because then you're not going to have these problems. You know what I mean? The plata is the best device for Shabbat because it circumvents all these problems. Since you can't really turn it up, you can't turn it down. There's no other things like that, and it's a constant heat, so you don't really need to. So you're good with the plata. That's why in Israel now, everybody's using a plata. You know what I mean? It's like it's become universal. You don't have a home without a plata. That's pretty much what it is. Okay. So we're done with this chapter, and now we're going to the next one, right? Which I think is talking about insulation. So we'll see. So this chapter is a very important one. You gotta know your stuff over here. If you know this chapter good, you know how to do Shabbat. Very simple. Let's go to Reish Nun Hey. So let's read the Torah. אין עושים מדורה מעצים סמוך לחשיכה עד שיצית בהם האור בעניין שתהא השלהבת עולה מאליה. So he says like this, right? If you want to make a bonfire for Shabbat, again, right? This is something we don't really do. But in those days, it was very handy for them, to stay warm, whatever. So they made a bonfire. So what you got to do is, if you're making it right before Shabbat, it says, right, make sure that you take the time to light it really good before Shabbat. So what does that mean? It's already like, well lit, right? And burning strong. Right? Not just, getting started, like with a couple of sparks over here and there. You want to be already past that. So you can already guess, right, what the reason for this is, because if it's not well lit, you're probably going to do something, to light it stronger on Shabbat, right? Which is a problem. The same idea, stirring the coals, all kinds of things like this, right? So yeah, and so it says if it's just like one big block of wood, צריך שיאחוז האור ברוב עוביו. So he says the flame has to catch on to most of the thickness of the log of wood. Uvrove kefo, and also the majority of the circumference, right? The majority of the radius, whatever. So pechamin afilu lo achaz behem ela kolshu. But it says when it comes to coals, though, right? Even if it already got started a little bit, shara it's allowed. Because they go by themselves, they go strong. You know, they have power. When it comes to a log of wood, though, right? The log has to be well lit because otherwise it doesn't go very good. You know, if it's not really going well, it takes a little time, to get it going. But it says once he already, got started very, well, right, on the fire, so then you can like warm yourself right next to it, right? You want to stay warm, but we have a nice bonfire there going on. Right, the old school way, right? In the good old days, they still do things like this in camp. They go to camp. They light a fire. You know how it is. And you're allowed to use the light too, right? So you can do two things, right, with that bonfire. You can warm up to it and also use it for light. Ben imhi al gabe karka or al gabe menorah, whether it's on the ground, right, or inside some kind of a lamp. Afilu hi imhi me'otan dvarim she'en osim mehem petila b'Shabbat. Even if it's made out of those materials that we don't make wicks from them on Shabbat. Medura shel zefet. Okay, so we'll stop there. Let's go to. I read already too much, but anyway, it's good. No problem. So let's go to Bet Yosef. Okay, I'm just gonna get some water. Take 1 minute, and thank you. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. So, as we said, in Beit Yosef, Mishnah Besot Pek Kama the Shabbat. He says it's in the first pek of Shabbat, the Mishnah. י"ט עמוד ב', ומאחיזין את האור במדורה. בית המוקד הוא בגבולין כדי שיצית האור ברובן. So here it says, right, in the Gemara that, as we said, right, if you want to start a bonfire, make sure that the majority of the log is lit before Shabbat. So it's already starting, burning well. It's on its way. The Gemara, it says in Gemara, my ruban, what does it mean majority? That means the majority of each log. Shmuel says, Shmuel says, right, they shouldn't have to say, bring some more wood and we'll put it under it. Tani Rabbi Chia, the Siwe, Shmuel. This rabbi says to write in a way that assists Shmuel. That means that the flame should be already going by itself, self-sufficient. It doesn't need any insistence. And not that the flame should need some assistance, from some other medium. It should be going by itself. So then he says, Katav Rambam, says the Rambam, Peg Gimel, Halacha Yutet. Ve'im lo idlik ruba asur le'anot ba b'Shabbat. So says the Rambam, if you didn't light the majority, like we said, you're not allowed to get benefit from it on Shabbat. Same thing, right? We're concerned he's gonna stir the wood, stir the coal, whatever. He's gonna move around the wood, right, in order that the flame should go higher. So says Ramagid, we learned this in the Braita. The asasiot betur musin shenizkera besiman mush neishnun daled. In that Braita Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Okay, that's one piece. Here's the other piece. So it says here, well, once it already got started going, right? Then you're allowed to use it for your purposes, as we said, warming up next to it, or right, or using the light. Beresh perek kameh madlikin, right? It's in this perek Tef Aleph Amud Aleph. Tan Rabbanan, the rabbis taught there, right? Kol elu shamru en madlikin bahem. All these, right, that they said we're not allowed to light with them. B'Shabbat, on Shabbat, meaning what, the wicks. Aval osim behem medura, but we're allowed to do, regardless, we're allowed to make a bonfire out of it. Ben teitchamen kenegda, whether to warm up to yourself, ben ishtamesh or to use the light. Ben al gabe karka, whether it's on the ground, ben al gabe midara, or whether it's in a lamp. Okay, that's it. So let's see Shulchan Aruch. Says Shulchan Aruch like this. En osin medura me'etzim samuch lechashecha. We don't do, right, as we said, bonfire close to Shabbat. Right? Every time we say close, we mean half hour. So what does that mean? You don't want to make a bonfire, right, too late. So you got to do it in a way. You want to do it in a way where the bonfire is already going by itself. It doesn't need any assistance anymore. So you should be able to do that much before Shabbat. without having to be assisted by other logs of wood. But if it's one log, so then it has to, right, start burning the majority of the log. Right? So majority, as we said, right, it covers two things: the thickness and the right the circumference. Ve'im lo udleka kol kach. So it says if it wasn't lit that much, asur le'anot min b'Shabbat. You're not allowed to enjoy it on Shabbat, right? You're not allowed to get benefit from it. Why? Because we're concerned he's gonna stir it up, right? To stir up the wood, right, or the whatever it is. He's gonna move around the wood in order to light it up harder, stronger. So it says once it already went enough, to be that rate, so then you're allowed to, right, heat yourself from it and to use the light. So then he says, it doesn't matter whether it's on the ground, right, or in a lamp. Even if it's made out of things which we don't use, we don't make wicks on Shabbat, for Shabbat. So there are certain materials, right, that we don't make wicks from them, as it's brought down, right, in the Talmud in Masechet Shabbat, because they don't burn well. Those wicks, the flame jumps around. Okay, fine. So here you're allowed to use anything. Okay, great. That's the end of it. We can do another one. We have time. So then the Torah said, right, that when it comes to coals, even if it's not so well lit, it's still allowed. So regarding that, says Bet Yosef, Sham ben Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. It says the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says, Af bepechamin kol shehen. So it says when it comes to coals, right, even a little bit, it's okay. It's good enough. Umashma le Rabbeinu, so implies to Rabbeinu the Torah, Rabbi Yehuda eno cholek al Tanakama, that this rabbi is not arguing on the first opinion, ela mosif al davar. He's just adding to it, right? Something there, adding a different element. The Tanakama modelo, and Tanakama agrees with him. The first opinion agrees with him. V'kachem divrei Rabbeinu Yerucham bechelek gimel, and that's how it is in Rabbi Yerucham also. Aval midivrei Rambam, but it says from Rambam though, the Perush HaMishnah on the Mishnah. The Rabbi Yehuda Paliga Tanakama. He seems to hold that Rabbi Yehuda argues on the first opinion. Katav ve'en halacha Rabbi Yehuda, because he wrote halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda. Ve'chen yireh midbarav perek gimel. Also, he seems to write this in the Mishnah Torah also. גם כן, שלא חילק בין פחמים לעצים, because he didn't differentiate between wood and coals, charcoals, whatever. Okay, interesting. That was bet. Okay, let's go to Shulchan Aruch, bet. So it says here, Yesh omrim, b'pechamin afilu lo achaz behem ma'ur, right? So some say that, as we said, when it comes to coals, right, even if it's not really so well lit, and a coal show, even a little bit, shara, it's allowed, to use them. Because they go, they light well. Right, and therefore we're not concerned that he's going to have to use some kind of a right method to increase the fire, to increase the flame. And the reason is because when it comes to these coals, there's more surface area, and therefore they light better. When it comes to the logs, right, they're thicker, less surface area, so it takes them more time to light. This is the thing. Okay, great. So that's bet. We have a little more time. I think we can do maybe. We'll see. Maybe we can do another one. This is the last one of the chapter. So now Tur talks about a different type of a bonfire. So it says like this, right? Medrash zefet, right? If you have a bonfire made out of zefet, right? So what is zefet? It's tar. The shit gofrit, right? Or gofrit is like sulfur, whatever. The kash ugvava, right? Or you have straw, right? Or hay. And also with these things you don't need, right? That it should be the majority should be lit up already. Because they light very fast, right? These are very easy to light. Again, right? The reason being is because it has a lot of surface area. These things, because they're chopped up. They're thin, right? So right? Same thing also if you're using twigs. Shagdan, he bundled them, bundled twigs. Also, if you have, right, as we said, the pits of the dates, shehem basal, which are in a basket, and sechim rov. You don't need the majority there. They go very fast. But if he didn't bundle the twigs, and he didn't put those pits right into a basket, then they do need majority, right? They don't go so fast. Okay, so that's the end of the tour. Let's go to Bet Yosef. Says Bet Yosef, Akol so per kama de Shabbat, right? Where is this? In the end of the first parak of Shabbat, Kaf Amud Bet. The Divrei Rabbeinu bekanim garinin grisat arosh. So he says the way the wording of the tour regarding the twigs, right, and the pits, it's like he says it's like the text of the Rosh. They look at Girsat Arif because why? Because when it comes to the text of the Rif, have a ifcha, right? It's the opposite. Just Just the opposite. What does that mean? When they're scattered, right, and they're not bundled, they don't need majority. The fish because they burn very well, very easily. They make agada kanim, but if he bundled it with natan and then he put the the pits, the salim, and put the pits in the baskets. Tzechim rov, then you need a majority. The fish they don't lie very fast like that. The zohi data Rambam. Rambam also goes like that. So in other words, the Rif and the Rambam have a different approach than the Rosh, right? Just the opposite, really. Well, if you girsat Rashi, so it's according to the text of Rashi, kanim enam tzechim rov agadam. The reads the twigs don't need, right, majority. Agdan, but if he bundled them, they do need it. With garinin havia ifcha. But when it comes to the pits, right, the opposite. The tzechin rov. So in other words, Rashi is in the middle, right? Not exactly like the Rif and the Rambam, not exactly like the Rosh, somewhere in the middle. Ve'im nitanam b'salim. If you put them in the pits, right, in the basket, enam tzechim rov, they don't need majority. Okay, that's the end of it. Let's see Shulchan Aruch, right? I bet you goes like the Rambam and the Rif. I bet you. Okay, here we go. So it says over here, medura shel zefet v'shel gofri, right? As we said, if you have a bonfire made out of tar or sulfur, v'shel kash u'gbaba, or you have the twigs, right? And the hay and the straw. Even if it's just a little bit lit, not the majority, shara, it's allowed, right? As we said, because they light very easily, these things. It's 1, 2, 3. The same thing with the twigs. The shil garinet, also the pits of the dates. Right? If they're scattered, then they light very fast. But it says if the twigs, right, are bundled, or you have the pits, right, which are in the basket, then it has to be like more stronger, right? Then it goes until it goes by itself. Some say the opposite, right? That was the Rosh, as we said. Okay, very good. So it seems like we go like the first opinion, right, which is the Rif and the Rambam. No big surprise. And we're done with the chapter. So B'ezrat Hashem, next time we'll do the next chapter, right? This was not the one on insulation, right? But we finished it anyway. So B'ezrat Hashem, next week, tomorrow we'll go to the next one, next chapter. Reish Nun Tet. Okay, thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov, and we'll see you tomorrow, B'ezrat Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless.